the modern Renaissance man framework. Since I first became interested in self-improvement, I have seen a lot of videos and read a lot of books along the themes of how to become the modern Renaissance man. This idea of the modern Renaissance man is something like a vision of a revolutionary lifestyle of work which fully takes advantage of all modern tools and information available to us by the internet, by the information revolution. This idea is closely related to other ideas such as the digital nomad or the independent entrepreneur and the modern polymath. I owe a lot to these people who developed these ideas because I learned so much from them. But I always thought that this idea of the modern Renaissance man, they were telling me what to do, but they weren't really telling me how to do it, how I should live my life, how I should be able to accomplish these big things. So, I've read many books on this type of self-improvement topic. I've watched many videos and done a lot of thinking and testing in my own life. And I developed a detailed vision and a comprehensive hypothesis as to how I think the modern Renaissance man should live. Now, I have absolutely no credentials to back myself up, not yet at least. I am not a modern Renaissance man. I'm 18 years old, I haven't achieved anything remarkable yet. But I am trying to be, and I have implemented every part of this lifestyle that I'm now going to talk to you about, and I have seen tremendous progress because of it. So I truly believe once it is all applied to my life for a long period of time, it will lead to success. So in the future then, this video will either be a beautiful prophecy of what was to come in my life, or it will be a delusional hypothesis that goes nowhere. But I'm willing to put it out there, just in case. As always, I will not be diligently referencing everything I say, but I will leave all the sources of my information in the description, so if you don't believe me, you can check it there for yourself. It's mostly books and videos. So, the modern Renaissance man lifestyle is built on three fundamental ideas, principles, whatever you want to call them. These are: number one, the flow state. Number two, the relationship between the mental, physical, and spiritual health. And number three, brain bandwidth. You might have heard these terms before if you're in the self-improvement space. So the flow state is the state of extreme focus which we get in when we do something that we are good at and that challenges us and is just over what we consider our comfortable level. This state is the same thing as deep work, and it gives us immense creativity, discipline, work ethic, and even satisfaction and joy from our work. You'll probably experience this while working really hard on an essay, for example, that's due the next day. And this is partly induced by that challenge that you get, which is the time limit of the essay being due the next day. That's why you maybe can work harder the day before an essay or an exam is due than 3 weeks before. However, it has been proven in deep work by Cal Newport that you can only work in this state in one area of our brain for about 2 to 3 hours in a day. After this, the quality of work in that area of our brain diminishes greatly. So, does that mean we just do 2 or 3 hours of work a day and then put our feet up and rest? No, because we can actually do more flow work in other areas of our brain, and this will actually transfer over into all the aspects of our life and increase the durability and the potency of all the flow work that we do within our lifestyle. So we want to be in the flow state as much as possible because this makes it easier to stay in it all day. It's much easier to stay in the state when you're constantly doing things that push you into this flow state rather than 2 hours of work and then mindless entertainment for 6 hours and then trying to work again. So it makes it easier to stay in this state, and it actually increases the strength, the potency of the flow state across all our activities. This is because when we're in the flow state, we're in a high brainwave state. It's the gamma state, I think it was. It's the very, very high. So at the bottom is dream state, just above the bottom is kind of daydreaming state. At the very highest is flow work. Interestingly enough, seeing and making progress in something actually accelerates the flow state. And so the flow state works very well with things that incorporate progressive overload, which is, if you don't know, we work to the point that we're challenged, and then we improve, and then we slightly increase the workload of what we're doing, and then we improve to meet that challenge, and then we increase it slightly. It keeps on going like this. So to do this, we abuse the principle of something challenging that is slightly above our skill level. And we do this in all aspects of our brain, using many different types of skills, many different types of activities. For example, for motor recognition, do a sport that involves physical coordination and awareness. Any sport will have one of these two things. But the important thing is that we are improving, that we do the sport, we continuously train it. 3 weeks later, we see slight improvements, we increase the challenge of that sport, we increase our training load, things like this. For the sound recognition part of our brain, play an instrument. For speech pattern recognition, learn a language. For our, I think it's the prefrontal lobe, do type of rational work, so work with numbers or with strategizing and managing things. Love and play is also a huge part of our brain that we can incorporate flow state in. It's actually the strongest activator of the flow state. Creative endeavors too. And these are all different types of activities that use different parts of our brain that we can incorporate into our life, and we can channel activities into these different parts of our brain into our life and stimulate the flow state and all different of these types of activities that we should use different parts of our brain. So what does this look like in the real world? Well, within your lifestyle, at all times, make sure that you are, at all periods of time at least, make sure that you are learning to play an instrument or practice an instrument, doing a physical sport, which involves progression that you can continually improve in, learning and practicing a new language, loving people around you and expressing it physically and verbally, and this can be just loving God as well. Also something that puts us in the flow state is trying new things and forming new neural networks in our brain. So speak to new people in your day-to-day, try new things, walk a different way home from school, for example. This will actually not only increase the flow state, but also increase this speed of learning in your brain, because it increases the myelination across all pathways, and this increases your memory retention and learning. So yes, literally walking a different way back from school or speaking to a new person makes you smarter. But here we run into a problem, because it's very hard to get into the flow state in the first place. And once we get out of the flow state, it's very hard to restart it again. So for example, if we're working 3 hours on a rational activity, such as learning calculus, and then we want to go play the piano, it's going to be very hard for our brain to transition between these two parts, and it'll be very easy for us to become distracted while we're playing piano or still be thinking of calculus and not be able to transition immediately from one flow state into another. This can be combated by just doing more flow work. It seems counterintuitive, but literally the more activities that are challenging and involve learning in our life, the more activities that we do, that is, the more our brain will be able to stay in the flow state and transition from one flow state to another. We can also use a transition activity. So, transition activity would be something from in between one flow state activity to another we do to keep our mind in that high brainwave activity, the gamma brainwave state, which is very focused and keep learning, but isn't something which over challenges us or prevents a barrier of entry between one part of our brain to another. And from my personal experience, the perfect transition activity is just reading, okay? So in between one flow state activity, in between practicing calculus, go to a room, read 10 pages of book, then go play piano. The reason why this is a perfect transition activity, I think, is because if we read for 10 minutes, we continue to learn. And it's also a constant activity that we're doing throughout our day-to-day. For example, when we're reading, it's familiar to us. We're reading a book that we've been reading for 2 and 3 weeks. It's something that's familiar and has a very low stimulus, for example, than scrolling your phone. Very, very high stimulus, lots of information very quickly. When you were reading, it's very, very slow information intake. And this forces us to recalibrate our brains in a way. But it's also still learning, and learning still keeps us in that focus state. But obviously don't read too much. If you're reading for about an hour, you'll probably lose focus and you become more relaxed, you start daydreaming. But reading for 10 to 15 minutes works very well, from my experience. So, use reading as a pit stop in between high focus activities. Work 2 hours, 2 to 3 hours, read 20 minutes, do another different type of work. We can repeat this all day and never burn out. It's an absolutely glorious positive spiral, which is that the more type of flow work we do, the more type of high focus challenging activities we do, the more we are forced into the flow state throughout our day. And the more that we are forced into this flow state, actually the more work that we can do within these high flow activities because we're more focused. So, to summarize, make it your goal to be doing as much learning and be in the flow state as much as you can throughout your day. Make a habit every day of doing one type of rational strategizing work, progressing in a physical sport, practicing an instrument, learning a new language, and loving and playing with those people around you. Also, try new things and speak to new people. Now, for the second principle, the relationship between mental, physical, and spiritual health. From my lengthy thought on this topic, I believe the relationship between mental, physical, and spiritual health to be something like a triple Venn diagram, which is this, in case you don't know, it's that. So, just for a quick definition, our physical health can be defined by parameters such as our VO2 max, our blood pressure, etc., etc. Our mental health can be defined by our ability to internalize and express the desire of our will in ourselves, which can be seen in parameters such as our anxiety levels, our confidence, our emotional stability, and our trust. And our spiritual health is the health of the soul, and the soul is what governs our will. And so the health of the soul can be defined as our inclination to and our recognition of righteousness, beauty, truth, perfection, humility, strength, love, charity, faith. Now, these things might be familiar to you, and that's because these are all basically just the aspects of God. So if you do believe in God, then we can summarize that our spiritual health is just our inclination to godliness and our relationship with God. If you don't believe in God, you can keep the first definition, but it's a bit longer. It means the same thing. Now, some things to improve these three types of health are, for our physical health, eating well, sleeping well, doing exercise. For our mental health, limiting social media usage, reading, journaling. And for our spiritual health, journaling, also praying, and the 7 sacraments. So, now that we know what these 3 types of health are, and some examples of what they are and how to improve them, I believe that the relationship between the mental, physical, and spiritual health is not as isolated as it may seem, but that they all affect one another consequently. So, increasing 2 of these types of healths will naturally increase the third. Increasing one will increase the other 2 very slightly, and decreasing vice versa. So, for example, going on a run and taking cold showers will immediately make you feel more productive, which makes you want to be a better person and help those around you more. This is improving our physical health, has then consequently improved our mental and spiritual health, because we're a better person, which is our spiritual health, our inclination to godliness, and our mental health, which is our confidence. Another example, praying and attending a church will make you want to look after your body more, because you read in the Bible that the body is a temple of the soul. You also believe that now it's your responsibility to look after your body and your health because of your appearance. So basically, these three things are all linked together, and what we want to do is maximize all three of them to the best possible extent that we can. And none of them actually inhibit one another. There are points of extremity. For example, if we want to have the strongest natural physical body possible, that will probably lead to some anxiety issues because of how we look and how strong we are. Probably lead to a bad spiritual health because we're so obsessed with this one type of topic. But the general rule is you can increase all three of these simultaneously, and they won't affect one another, but they will all increase one another. So use the methods that I just told you, develop an understanding of your mental, physical, spiritual health using this Venn diagram, and do as much as you can. Now, onto the third principle, which is brain bandwidth. Our brain has a limited capacity of information that it can truly learn by long-term memory, categorization and memorization, and by processing each day. We increase the rate at which we can learn things by using the flow state, like I just previously mentioned, but we are still limited to how much we can actually process in a day. This is why we get things like brain fog and daydreaming, especially in or after stressful and high stimulus environments. This includes emotional stimulus as well. For example, some examples that I can bring up is going shopping into town. You're seeing all these adverts, you're seeing all these big billboard screens, so many people around you. It's a high stimulus environment. That might be just as hard on our brain to process as a hard argument with our family, a 2-hour-long argument. These things have the same effect, but from two different sources. This has an easy solution, and basically it is just cutting out all unnecessary stimulus, emotional stimulus, and informational stimulus. So, some easy solutions. Delete all social media. You don't need any social media, and any justification that you think you'll need is because you don't realize how awful they are, and you think that some small benefit of learning, some small stimulus, it outweighs all of the negative stimulus that it has on your brain, which it doesn't. Trust me, it doesn't. Only keep WhatsApp, it's the only thing that you'll need, and maybe Instagram for networking purposes or for your business, but be very careful. Some other things, stop watching the news. Stop watching the news entirely. The news is not worth it. Even if you think that it's good to keep up with the modern day times, good to know what's going on, the downsides are absolutely detrimental to mental health, to the brain bandwidth. It's not worth it under any circumstance. This is because the news is designed to make you fearful. It's designed to make you have an emotional attachment to the news. It's not just information about some random person dying in Indonesia that you have never heard of, but it's designed to make you attached to these stories, attached to these ideas that don't actually consequently affect you on any long chain of events. So stop watching the news. I'm sure you'll know what I'm going to say next. It's things of similar lines. Don't watch TV series. TV series are the same. They're propaganda made to make you think and believe in a certain way, and this makes you have emotional attachment to ideas that you don't need to have attachment to. It is good to learn. It is good to learn about what's happening in the world, but learn through books and learn through sources that limit any unnecessary brain bandwidth, any unnecessary emotional response. Stop listening to music. a similar thing. You might think it's harmless. You might think that you're not thinking about music, but you're humming it in your head almost all day. This is a huge burden on our mind, actually, because of the amount of stimulus that there is. And the downside is not listening to music. It's just a boring life. It's something we can all deal with, and it will come much easier as well with our increased mental health and increased spiritual health. It becomes a lot easier to deal with just a boring, easy day. Don't indulge in unnecessary conversations or arguments, things like gossip, things like overreacting to a certain event to cause a type of exciting drama in a conversation. And girls like to do this a lot. Guys do it too in other ways. It's not necessary. It doesn't help you. These things add up a lot in the long run. Conversations take up a big part of our mental space, a big part of the brain bandwidth. This is why things like podcasts are also so detrimental, because it's like we're listening to a conversation. It's like we feel that we're in a conversation. We're processing all this data. Like we are in the conversation, trying to think of a response of how to speak, and yet we're not. We're just feeding the information in from another source and that we can't bounce back off of, that we can't truly absorb and understand. Even small things, like when I'm on the bus, I try and not look out the window, because if I do, I end up just people watching, and I'll just be watching some middle-aged lady, and I'll just be thinking about unnecessary thoughts, just wondering about other people's days, wondering what's happening. It doesn't benefit you at all. It doesn't help you. So just keep your mind focused like a horse, just with blinders. I just try to look at my book, because that information, it piles up. This is why we have brain fog. This is why we're tired. It does make a difference, okay? So, in summary, live your life like an ascetic. Don't consume any unnecessary information, and always be aware of the upsides and downsides of consuming information and how it will affect your brain. If you think that the downsides outweigh the upsides at any point in that activity, do not do it. It's not worth it. Now, I'm not against all pleasure and entertainment, but we need to maximize the good and minimize the bad from pleasures and entertainment. For example, we want to maximize the flow state that we get in, so from this entertainment, from these pleasures. So things that involve learning, things that involve love, things that involve type of challenge, type of skill is very good for us. But we also want to minimize the damage to our mental, physical, and spiritual health, and the unnecessary brain bandwidth consumed. And it's no surprise that these healthy activities, which are best in accordance with these three principles I've just mentioned, are basically just high art and high entertainment. So things like a classical musical concert. It's much better to go to a classical music concert than it is to go to a mumble rap concert. And if you think about these three principles, well, the unnecessary brain bandwidth, classical music is a lot quieter, a lot subtler details in the music, so you have to focus, and it's not any unnecessary noise. A rap music concert, so huge speakers, a lot of noise. The words that are used are quite filthy and degenerate. These things, our brain consumes them, and our brain is actually affected by them, whether we are aware of it or not. Classical music concerts, it's talking about God, it's talking about holiness. These are things which are even good for us if we listen to an extent. Also, pleasures like food. Eat a raspberry chocolate cake. It's much better for you than sweets or junk food or alcohol, and you'll have a similar amount of pleasure, and it is much less detrimental to our physical health, to our spiritual health, to our brain bandwidth, a lot of these other factors that I've just mentioned. I'm not against going to the movies either, but I would say go to the movies at a maximum of once a month, and you need to be very, very aware of all the downsides of that movie before you go, so that you can almost cancel out the downsides afterwards and during the movie, instead of being unaware of it, and then it affecting you much more. Excuse me. So, there you go. Those are my three principles which constitute my modern Renaissance man framework. I hope that you will try to implement any of these into your life. I hope that you are convinced, but if you're not, I hope that you at least just learned something. And I will see you in the next video. Peace and blessings upon you.